Good afternoon, good morning, or whatever it is, wherever you are. Most people wouldn't be excited about the post-lunch crowd, only because I know how everybody feels after that. But after you guys have been in the casino this week and eating lunch, and I am jet-lagged out of my mind, we're probably all in the same place. I really wanted to come up here and just talk about a little bit about the history. I was really excited to be invited to talk at this conference because the theme of it was automation of sites. And I have literally been doing automation of sites my entire career and only in the C-store industry. I started off with a company called Radiant Systems, spent 6 years with them, did 13 years with Wayne Fueling Systems, helping develop their next 4-core control layer, their next payment technologies, the stuff you guys have seen in your stores forever. And so getting the opportunity to come out here and speak to you guys was a great honor. I now work at a company called Invenco. The pictures you see are all the cities that Invenco has offices. Invenco makes EMV outdoor payment terminals that retrofit into the pumps in the US. So I've continued this journey of automation of sites, but I thought I'd come to you today not to talk about the technology of it all, but just some themes that I've seen in the markets as I've gone around the world and watched all the different retailers try to do this, go on this journey of automating their sites. So the story will begin with a little bit about the history of fuel and convenience retail. I'm going to talk about the concept of knowing your customer and why that's so important to how you pick how you automate your sites. We'll talk about how to change threats into opportunities. I go to several conferences a year, and I keep hearing a lot of people talk about the threat of Amazon, the threat of electric vehicles, the threat of all these things, but really these should be seen as opportunities. I'll do a brief discussion on technology. I could literally talk about technology all day. And then we'll talk about change, because change is inevitable. If we're going down this journey of trying to make our sites be more productive, more efficient, and better serving our customers, we're going to have to know how to change when the market's changing around us. So just a little bit of history. Most of you probably already know this. A lot of fuel and convenience is built around the whole concept of putting gas into automobiles. So that journey started a long time ago with these ridiculous hand crank pumps, but the reality was the automotive industry was booming, and we needed to be able to deliver the energy in order to drive those vehicles. The thing that came up as that became more prevalent, the thing that came up is the concept of measurement. So, and in fact, that's driven the pump manufacturers for some time, almost for 50, 60 years, is how do I make a more accurate design around measurement? Because customers who were putting this energy into these vehicles were concerned that they were actually getting the amount of fuel that they had purchased. Then we moved in the concept of digital measurement, where you weren't hand cranking into a vial, but basically you had a meter that had an electronic concept that was measuring the fuel that was going through it. And again, this was all about driving how accurate the measurement was. Then we moved into the automation of fueling. What was happening in that segment place is that we couldn't build retail locations fast enough to meet the fueling need. So the reality was the stores had to be more efficient in their ability to deliver fuel to the vehicles. And then right around 1986, we got to pay at the pump. The systems design that went to that, again, was just an evolution of what they were doing to authorize and deauthorize the pumps. So now we had credit card readers out there. We had people that didn't have to come inside the store, and we could actually deliver more fuel than we could ever before. Then come about the mid-90s, came this whole concept of the full automation of sites. This was driven by touchscreen point of sales, integrations with safes, integrations with money order machines, and all this was around driving store efficiency. Basically, how do we get more bottom line profits out of the business by having a more automated system to do things for us? Those integrated systems that we're using today are pretty much the same ones that have been around since the mid-90s. And they've kind of evolved, different forms of touch, different technologies, but fundamentally they're the same very closed, tight-knit systems that have provided the systems and capabilities that we're using today. So the real question is, if you're looking at automation of sites, what's next? So I'm going to share with you kind of what I've seen around the world about how people have gone through this process to determine what do we need to do next in order to be more efficient. So for me, I consider these the tenets of fuel and convenience retail. And I think the first one is a thing that everybody should keep at the core of their heart. If you're really thinking about how to make your business be more successful in convenience retail, you have to know what you have that nobody else has. I always refer to this as geofence convenience. I'm not trying to trademark a term or anything like this, but the truth of the matter is you're the last mile for the customer. Everything that you do is about convenience for that person who's going to that store that's in their neighborhood, or they're driving past it because it's on their way to work. And that is a very, very important concept. That is not easily reproduced. And the fact of the matter is that there's no technologies, there's no nothing. The reality is that fuel and convenience has been around so long that you've got this competitive advantage all wrapped up. So as you're thinking about what you want to do with technology, you should be thinking about, well, how can I leverage that advantage to do things with new customers and new markets and new capabilities because I have this and nobody else does. So know your customer and your future customer. Currently you've got people who are shopping there because it's close to their neighborhood, but the reality is the mix of what people are buying is changing over time. We see these generational gaps, and it's quite interesting, the distinctive concepts that arise from that, whether it's fresh food offerings or whether it's meals that are ready to go. I think it has to do with what's going on in our environment and all the things that are around us. I talked about changing threats into opportunities. I'll give you a few examples of that as we get further into the presentation. I want to emphasize this concept of using open systems and technologies that enables your business. These closed-in systems are actually preventing us from being more effective at some of the things that we want to do. So if we really need to reach out to our customers and be effective at talking to them, those closed systems are basically limiting our ability to do development in that space, because in order to talk to them, there are certain manufacturers who tie up the ability to have those conversations. And again, being willing to change and adapt. This has been an unfortunate truth in basically every industry in the world. We'll talk about some of those examples too. I went to the Connexus conference this year. If you don't know, Connexus is driving the retail technology standards for fuel and convenience retail. And I always like to look at the SOI presentation that Gray Taylor does. And fundamentally, I looked at it this year from the perspective of, if you want to understand how your competitive advantage has affected your ability to do business, these charts say everything. The business has grown since the beginning of time. In-store sales have grown, fuel sales have grown. So there must be something about your business that's not easily reproducible. Otherwise, the likes of the Amazon or the grocery stores or somebody would have already captured that and taken it from you. As you can see, this sustained growth shows a very, very different picture. And it's not just about the growth in retail. It's also the profits that are generated out of it. You've continuously grown your profits, since the early 1990s. So the reality is the stuff that you're selling in fuel and the stuff that you're selling in stores and the margins that you're making on those things, it's still difficult for someone like a grocery store chain to be able to reproduce that. Otherwise, your business wouldn't be growing like this. So this is another thing that I liked about this, that I saw at the Connexus conference. They were talking about what the traditional industry paradigms were versus where we needed to go. And again, I think these are important concepts, fundamentally because you have to figure out how you're going to structure your automation in order to get there. So he kind of tokened this thing of gas, cokes, and smokes. Today you're a fuel provider. You're providing commodities to people who are driving in specific locales. You have limited interactions with consumers, less than 4 minutes if you're talking about a gas pump transaction. You've got offers and promotions that are relatively limited. They're not targeted towards customers necessarily. Limited assortment of coffee, tobacco, packaged goods, packaged beverage. And generally, it's thought of as a traditional buying channel. And from Gray's perspective, this is what tomorrow looks like. Basically, the retail fuel and convenience is an energy provider. He maintains it would be a service-driven business. I would actually say it's always been a service-driven business. As a customer who visits these stores, how people treat me in that store makes a huge difference on whether I come back. Best-in-class customer experiences. This is a real challenge in our industry. So fundamentally, lots and lots of consumers are coming through our stores, which means that they constantly have to be maintained, they have to be cleaned, and you really have to have rigid processes in order to provide that kind of customer experience. But technology also might play a part in that. Having tailored and personalized experiences and services. The idea here is that in order to know your customer, you want to know that exact customer, what it is that they buy, when they come to your stores, and why. Because if you know that information, you can be more effective at actually selling them things. Hyper-localized or differentiated assortment. That's, again, about knowing your customer, knowing what it is that they buy and making sure that you have that available to them. And omni-channel frictionless experiences. When we start to talk about taking those threats and making them into opportunities, this is an important concept for them. So Gray presented this at Connexus of this year in Nashville, and I thought, okay, let me take my tenets that I just said I was going to say to everybody and see how they apply to these concepts. So when I think about this, as an energy provider, as a service-driven business, and hyper-localized or differentiated, I'm really focused on here that your geographic convenience is what makes you different here. Your ability to be an energy provider is going to be differentiated by the fact that you are where they need to be, right? Electric vehicles have had limited sales, although they've grown quite a bit, limited sales over the years because people, quite frankly, are afraid. Like, what happens if I run out of battery power? Then I'm just stuck there. By the fact that you have these localized areas, you, quite frankly, could be one of the ways in which you deliver that energy. Having a service-driven business, again, as a geographic convenience, you're right there. So you can provide that service to those individual consumers in a way that nobody else can. And that hyper-localized content, understanding your market and being able to provide that to a localized area is something that can't be easily reproduced by other retailers in the segment. A lot of these other things are about knowing your customer and your future customer and the technology that would be required in order to do so. So if you wanted to have a best-in-class customer experience, you're probably not going to be able to do it, once again, if everybody's just a John and Jay Doe to you. You really need to be able to leverage that technology to know who that person is coming into your store and having and the ability to market to them. And unless you can afford to have a lot of store cashiers and such, you probably have to have technology that's interacting with these customers in order to drive these sales. Changing threats into opportunities across the board. Everything that's changing about our business, whether it's petroleum products going into electric, whether it's the services that need to be provided at these stores, whether it's about having best-in-class customer experiences, some of those things come in as threats from other areas of retail or other areas of technology. And we need to figure out how to leverage those things and change them into advantages for ourselves. Using open systems and technology, I don't know how to stress this enough. Until we can get to this place, it becomes very challenging in order to be able to deliver on all these promises. If other providers are not a part of the game, in other words, their tightly knit infrastructures are keeping us from the ability to add other technologies and leverage things that are in the marketplace today, it becomes very challenging to keep up with what's going on in the technology space. So as you're making those selections, as you're thinking about automating your locations, really be thoughtful about what types of technology you're putting into place in order to enable that. From an omni-channel frictionless experience or hyper-localized and different, there's a lot of technology that does these things. Again, leveraging an open systems provider can help you get there much faster than if you're working with somebody who's closed in this space. I'm going to take a step back and just talk about some specific examples about changing threats into opportunities. At every conference that I go to related to convenience retail, they always talk about Amazon. And this was the introduction of the Amazon Go locations. And I guess everybody perceives that as their attempt to try and get into this concept of geographic convenience. But the reality is they're very limited on where they can put these stores. They don't have the geographic opportunities that you guys have because you already own those locations. You're already close to the neighborhoods. You're already on the way to work. Amazon Go is building these things in these kind of like outdoor mallsy places, and it's really cute and cool, and I guess it's neat technology, but it's never going to be able to provide the convenience that you guys are providing to customers. So what are the other things we can think about Amazon's that might be opportunities? Well, I was talking to a retailer recently, and he explained to me, I don't buy my energy drinks from the standard distributor. And I was like, what? Everybody does that. Why would you go outside the channel? He said, the reality is I can actually buy these energy drinks at cents lower, not dollars lower, than that actual distributor can, and Amazon will deliver it right to my front door. And I was like, that's incredible. I never really thought about that from a perspective, but if Amazon is out there acting as, I don't know, a master distributor of product, then that's an opportunity for retailers to actually save money. They could have things delivered, even within hours, to their front door, based upon the fact that Amazon is buying billions of dollars worth of energy drinks. So that's one opportunity of actually turning that into an opportunity. Second thing that I would say is that Amazon is always trying to figure out how to get their packages to people in a more convenient way. I've actually spoken to some retailers where they're providing capabilities and systems to allow Amazon to deliver packages to their store because, once again, that's on my way to work, that's on my way home. And if there's an opportunity to do so and be more efficient, I can get fuel, I can pick up my packages. It's just another way that you can look at Amazon in a very different light. Not as someone who's a threat to your business, but someone who's developing and leveraging some kind of supply chain activities or delivery activities in such a way that you can take advantage of it. The other part is electric vehicles. Again, the rise of electric vehicles hasn't happened yet. At the Connexus conference this year, they said the lag of the impact they expect on electric vehicles from sales of last year won't actually affect the industry until 10 years from now. So everybody who's running around thinking electric's going to change everything tomorrow probably hasn't got the right time frame on that. Another example of that would be payments. A lot of people have talked about the fact that payments are going to go to mobile. The truth of the matter is there are lots of generations that are not ready for that, and we've been using cards for decades. You're going to have some kind of transitionary period. And as we've evaluated that across the world, that looks like it's about 10 to 15 years away. But if we were going to invest in something that looked like a hybrid station, quite frankly, we could put electric in our stations. You could put them on the back courts. You could provide some other services in the store that might be relevant to them where they do have to wait around for 5 minutes. So leveraging these things that are changing in the marketplace and thinking about your hyper-localized content as a convenience provider is just another way for you to turn some of these threats into different opportunities. As it relates to technology, again, this has been my world since I started my world. And the fact of the matter is that you've seen this evolution of concept of open source, open APIs, and those people who didn't embrace those concepts got left behind. The reason that we ended up with Googles in the world and all these other things that have actually delivered really amazing cloud technologies is the fact that they're open, they're easy to use, they're easy to connect to. They've taken these very complicated things like servers and boxes and operating systems and just made it something that you just turn on and you don't even know where it is. We need to get to a point in the convenience retail industry where our level of automation is sitting on top of a set of open APIs. This is obviously an initiative of Connexus, and what I would suggest to you as retailers is to really be supportive of that with all the different technology providers that you're working with. Just say, open up, make it easy, give everybody your protocols, stop closing it down, because we want to be able to accelerate our ability to deliver convenience and different packages and services to our customers. And by closing it down, by locking it up, you're preventing that from happening. So in the future, rather than having all these proprietary serial protocols to pumps, and again, I know lots about this stuff, talking to safes, talking to price signs, those should really just be services sitting on your network that anybody and everybody can talk to. Once we have that kind of a world, we can start to integrate with other systems. When we talk about this concept of hyper-localized content and providing services from other places, or even integrating with things like Amazon, that really opens up when we start to look in this world as an API space and not as all these different devices that are sitting on our forecourts with proprietary protocols. I talked a little bit about mobile earlier. I really think this is an important part of our space as we move forward. This really, really digs into the whole concept of technology and knowing your customer. I think this is an important place for payments. I think this is an important place for marketing. I think this is an important place for you to know where your customers are and when they're coming to you and what they do when they're at your stores. The neat thing about a mobile device is it's mine, right? So the security and everything about it is in my phone. I control that. And to the extent that we can have APIs or software that allows that phone to integrate with things in my store, make the experience very custom to me, like promos that just show up because I'm me and I like I don't know. I only drink water at convenience stores, so maybe I always get the water deal. But other people are going to buy energy drinks. Other people are going to buy chips. I have a friend of mine who eats nothing but beef jerky. And you really want to be able to be in a space where if I had my mobile device and it was integrated with your store, it gave me the opportunity to see those promotions. And it's basically a better customer experience for me. It has nothing to do with anybody else in this store. So the integrations with these mobile devices is going to be an important part of our journey from an automation perspective. And maybe there's a future, not saying there will be or won't be, where point of sale is not as important anymore, that the entire transaction can be conducted on my phone. And that rather than having people who are cashiers and sitting there and working there, they can be working with customers and be providing a better experience for people inside your stores. So mobile technology is an interesting piece of this journey. Again, they're primarily driven by open APIs. You can do all kinds of cool things with a mobile phone these days. And I think that as we look at those integrations with those systems, as we open up to all these other types of things that are going on with these providers, this becomes an important tool in our toolbox to be able to generate this type of growth and automation in our stores. The last thing I talked about was the need to be ready to change and adapt. As I look at the different generations with Gen X, Gen Y, millennials, as a child, I never paid attention to how different everybody seemed. And I'm sure my parents looked at me and thought I was totally weird, but now I'm looking downward and going, they're totally weird. I don't know what's going on. When we don't pay attention to these things, the world passes us by. And again, the history is littered with businesses that didn't pay attention to this. The whole Blockbuster versus Netflix. Do you guys remember when Netflix was a mail order service? I was not thinking at the time that one day they're not going to be doing this at all. And they were doing all of that in the background. While we were sitting there mail ordering things instead of going to our Blockbusters and every month we'd get a new movie, these guys were going, hey, it's just a matter of time and they're just going to be getting this on their computers. So what forethought that took? What happened there was the digitization of movies. And they had all kinds of challenges in order to go down that road. But eventually, because they knew that customers wanted this, they wanted this, I want my movie now, again, hyper-localized, knowing your customer, they actually went through all the trials and tribulations to get the technology there. Not only to digitize the movies, but to provide the edge computing that makes it so that it's real time for all of us. Kodak, enough said, digitization of film. They basically didn't want to invest in that. They had the opportunity to beat all the competitors in this space, and they basically said, hey, that will hurt our film business. We shouldn't do that. Got to know when to change. Kmart, as a retailer, man, that store did not change since I was like 5 years old. And no wonder everyone eventually said, okay, the blue light specials are not really that cool anymore. And maybe some of you don't know what they are. Anyway, this is the man who said it in the first place. If we don't change, if we don't adapt, if we don't apply our logic, then basically other things are going to pass us by. So as a retailer, as you're thinking about all of these concepts, about knowing your customers, about leveraging open systems technologies, about leveraging your advantage in this space, which is your geographic convenience, taking all of those things, you need to think about how can I do this better for customers? And that's what you should be investing in when you're investing in automating your sites. So that's it for me. If I have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. All right, I'll leave you to enjoying the rest of your day. Thank you very much.